What you're looking at shouldn't exist. Look at its face. The eyes are hollow, sunken into the skull, but they're watching you. The mouth is open in something that might be a smile, but the expression is wrong. Too knowing, too aware. The body is that of a child, naked and pale, but the proportions are off. The limbs are too long. The fingers are too thin. This is not a cherub. This is not an angel. This is something that was once human, or something that is trying to be human and failing. And it's only one small piece of a much larger nightmare. Pull back from this creature, and you'll see what it's doing. It's floating in darkness, suspended in a void of black and deep crimson. Its tiny hand is reaching towards something, serving something. Because this creature is an attendant, a servant in a fairy court, and what it serves is even more disturbing than what it is. There, in the center of the canvas, draped in translucent white fabric that does nothing to hide her naked body, is a woman, the Fairy Queen. Her eyes are closed, her head is tilted back, her lips are parted in ecstasy, and wrapped in her arms, pressed against her bare chest, is a monster, a man with the head of a donkey. His eyes are dark and animal. His ears are long and grotesque. His snout pushes against her face, and she's embracing him like a lover. Around them, more of these demon children float in the darkness. One hovers near the queen's head, its face twisted in the same unsettling, not quite smile. Another clings to the donkey man's body. A third watches from the shadows, its form barely visible against the black void. They're attending to this union, serving it, facilitating it. And every single one of them has that same wrongness, that same sense of being caught between human and something else. This is a painting. It was created around 1790, and it depicts a scene from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. The woman is Titania, queen of the fairies. The donkey-headed man is Bottom, a weaver who has been transformed by the trickster sprite Puck. The demon children are her fairy attendants, her court, the creatures who do her bidding. But this is not the whimsical fairy tale you remember from school plays and summer theatre productions. This is not the comedy of enchanted lovers and mischievous sprites dancing through a moonlit forest. This is Shakespeare filtered through something darker, something that understands that A Midsummer Night's Dream, beneath its surface of romance and magic, is a story about losing control, about desire that overrides reason, about transformation that strips away humanity. The story goes like this. Titania and her husband, Oberon, the king of the fairies, are at war. She has refused to give him something he wants, a changeling child she's adopted. In revenge, Oberon orders Puck to find a flower, a magical bloom whose juice, when placed on sleeping eyelids, will make the victim fall in love with the first thing they see when they wake. Oberon plans to humiliate his wife, to make her desire something beneath her, something grotesque. And so Puck squeezes the flower's juice onto Titania's eyes while she sleeps, and when she wakes, the first thing she sees is Bottom the Weaver, who Puck has also transformed as a joke, replacing his human head with that of an ass. And the spell works. Titania looks at this monster and feels overwhelming love, desire, need. She calls him beautiful. She orders her attendants to serve him, to bring him honey and scratch his long ears. And she takes him to her bower, to her bed, while her fairy court watches. It's a comedy. In the play, it's meant to be funny. The proud queen brought low by enchantment, the simple weaver terrified and confused by the attention of a fairy goddess. It's all reversed at the end. Oberon takes pity on his wife and removes the spell. Bottom's head is restored. Everyone wakes up thinking it was all a dream. But the artist who painted this scene didn't see comedy, he saw horror. Look at Titania's face again. Her eyes are closed, yes, but it's not the peaceful sleep of someone dreaming. It's the closed-eyed abandon of someone under a spell, someone who has lost control of their own mind, their own desires. Her arms clutch at Bottom with desperate need, but there's something wrong in the way her fingers dig into his flesh. This isn't love. This is compulsion. This is a mind that has been invaded, and rewritten, and Bottom himself. Look at his expression. His animal face is impassive, almost dull. He's not reveling in this attention. He's not even aware of what's happening to him. He's a man whose humanity has been stolen, replaced with the head of a beast, and he's being smothered by the affection of a supernatural being he can't comprehend. He's trapped, just as much a victim as Titania. But perhaps the most disturbing element is the fairy attendants. In every other depiction of this scene, in every illustrated edition of Shakespeare, the fairies are cute. Tiny winged sprites with flower crowns and gossamer wings, Tinkerbell creatures, harmless, whimsical. These attendants are not whimsical. They're changelings in the truest sense of the word. Creatures that were swapped for human children, or creatures that were human children once and have been transformed by their time in the fairy realm into something no longer recognizable as human. Their skin is too pale, almost translucent. Their limbs are elongated, stretched. Their faces have that knowing quality, that ancient awareness in infant bodies that triggers every evolutionary alarm in the human brain. This is the uncanny valley made flesh. One of them, the creature closest to Titania's head, has its tiny hand raised as if presenting something to its queen, but its face is turned toward us, toward the viewer, and its expression is a leer. It knows what's happening here. It knows this is wrong, and it's complicit. It's serving this enchantment, this violation of free will, with the eager helpfulness of a child who doesn't understand the weight of what they're doing. The painting's composition reinforces the nightmare. There is no forest here, no moonlight filtering through trees, no flowers or streams or any of the pastoral beauty you'd expect from a Midsummer Night's Dream. There is only darkness. A black void surrounds the figures, punctuated by deep reds and browns that suggest not nature, but something more primal. Blood, flesh, the interior of something living. And the light source is impossible to locate. Titania's body glows, her white skin and white drapery luminous against the dark, but there's no lamp, no moon, no logical explanation for that glow. It's as if she's lit from within, as if the enchantment itself is radiating from her skin. The overall effect is claustrophobic, suffocating. You're not looking at a scene from a play, you're looking at a moment frozen in a nightmare. A moment where desire and disgust have become indistinguishable, where transformation has become body horror, where fairy magic has revealed itself not as whimsy, but as violation. This is what the artist saw in Shakespeare, not the comedy of errors and enchantments, but the darkness underneath. The way love spells are fundamentally a form of possession, the way transformation is a loss of self, the way the fairy realm, for all its beauty and magic, is fundamentally alien to human understanding and human morality. The fairies don't operate on our terms. They don't care about consent or dignity or the sanctity of the human form. They play with mortals the way children play with insects, and sometimes the insects get hurt. And so the artist painted this. A fairy queen lost in compelled desire, embracing a man who has been turned into a beast, attended by creatures that should be children but have become something else. All of it taking place in a darkness that suggests this isn't happening in the mortal world at all, but in some in-between space, a nightmare realm where the rules of reality don't apply. The painting is called Titania and Bottom. It was created around 1790 by an artist who would spend the next 3 decades painting nightmares, who would become known as the master of depicting terror on canvas, who would create images that would define what nightmares looked like for generations to come. But this painting, as disturbing as it is, wasn't his first nightmare. It wasn't even his most famous. 5 years before he painted this scene of enchantment and transformation, he created another image, an image that would become the most iconic nightmare in the history of art. An image that would be reproduced, referenced, parodied, and imitated for the next 200 years. An image that would give us the word we use for these visions, the nightmare. this is the painting that started it all. A woman lies on a bed, her body draped across the mattress in a pose that shouldn't be possible. Her back is arched to the point of breaking, her spine curved in a way that suggests either ecstasy or agony. Her right arm hangs off the side of the bed, limp, the fingers nearly touching the floor. Her head is thrown back, tilted at an unnatural angle, her face turned away from us. Her hair spills down toward the ground in a cascade of brown. She's wearing a white dress, sheer and flowing, that clings to her body and pulls on the red bedding beneath her. And crouched on her chest, staring directly at you, is a demon. It sits with its legs folded, its weight pressing down on her torso, on her rib cage, on her lungs. Its body is small and hunched, almost simian, covered in dark fur or skin that blends into the shadows, but its face is fully visible. The eyes are enormous, wide and hollow, catching the light in a way that makes them seem to glow. The mouth is a thin line, neither smiling nor frowning, just watching. Its hands rest on its knees in a posture of patience, of waiting. It's not attacking her. It's not moving at all. It's simply sitting there, observing, as she struggles to breathe beneath its weight. This demon has a name in folklore. It's called an incubus, a male demon that visits women in their sleep. In medieval texts, it was blamed for nightmares, for sleep paralysis, for the feeling of suffocation that sometimes accompanies deep sleep. The weight on the chest, the inability to move, the sense of a presence in the room, all of it was attributed to this creature, this thing that sat on sleeping victims and fed on their fear. But the demon is only half of the nightmare. Behind the woman, emerging from a gap in the heavy red curtains that hang in the background, is a horse. Its head pushes through the fabric, its neck straining forward, its eyes fixed on the scene before it. And those eyes are wrong. They're white, completely white. No iris, no pupil, just blank white orbs that catch the light and reflect it back like polished bone. The horse's nostrils are flared, its teeth are bared. It's not a living animal, it's something else. A mare, the nightmare, the creature from which the word itself derives. In folklore, the mare was a spirit that rode on the chests of sleepers, bringing visions of terror. The painting's title is The Nightmare. It was completed in 1781, and when it was first exhibited at the Royal Academy in London, it caused a sensation. People couldn't look away from it. The image was shocking in its intimacy, in its suggestion of violation. Here was a woman, alone, vulnerable, unconscious, with a demonic entity pressing down on her body while another supernatural creature watched. The sexual implications were impossible to ignore. The incubus tradition was well known. These were demons that came to women in the night, that invaded their dreams, that left them feeling violated and helpless upon waking. The painting made that violation visible. But it wasn't just the sexual threat that disturbed viewers. It was the helplessness. The woman in the painting has no agency. She can't fight back. She can't wake up. She can't even move. Her body is limp, powerless, entirely at the mercy of whatever is happening to her. And the demon knows this. You can see it in the way it sits, so calm, so patient. It's not in a hurry. It has all the time it needs. The color palette reinforces the nightmare atmosphere. The woman glows white and pale against the darkness, her dress and skin luminous. The red of the bedding is deep and rich, the color of blood or wine or velvet, and everything else, the background, the shadows, the demon's body, the curtains, is darkness, deep browns and blacks that seem to absorb light rather than reflect it. The only sources of illumination are the woman's body and the horse's eyes, creating an unnatural, sourceless glow that makes the whole scene feel like it's taking place outside of normal reality. The technique is precise. Every fold of fabric is rendered with care. The texture of the bedding, the softness of her hair, the sheen of her skin, all of it is painted with an attention to detail that makes the scene feel tangible, real. You could reach out and touch the mattress, you could brush the hair from her face, and that realism makes the supernatural elements, the demon and the horse, even more unsettling. They exist in the same physical space as the woman, rendered with the same level of detail, which means they must be just as real as she is. When the nightmare was exhibited, it became the most talked about painting of the year. People returned to the Royal Academy multiple times just to see it again. Critics wrote about it, poets referenced it, and within months, it was being reproduced as an engraving. This is crucial to understanding how the painting haunted a generation. In 1781, there was no photography, no internet, no way for an image to spread instantly, but engravings, prints made from copper or steel plates, could be produced in the hundreds or thousands and sold cheaply. They could be distributed across Europe, hung in homes and taverns and shops. And the nightmare was one of the most reproduced images of its era. Suddenly, this vision of a woman tormented by demons was everywhere. It appeared in medical textbooks as an illustration of sleep disorders. It was copied by other artists, parodied in political cartoons, referenced in literature. When Mary Shelley was writing Frankenstein in 1816, this painting already existed in the cultural consciousness. When Edgar Allan Poe was crafting his tales of terror, this image was there. The visual language of nightmares, the iconography of the demon sitting on the chest, the pale victim in white, the watching presence in the shadows, all of it can be traced back to this single painting. But beyond its cultural impact, the nightmare captures something true about the experience of sleep paralysis. Modern medicine has explained the phenomenon. It occurs when the brain wakes before the body does, when consciousness returns, but the muscles remain in the paralyzed state of REM sleep. The victim is awake, aware, but unable to move. And because the brain is still partially in a dream state, hallucinations are common. Shadowy figures, presences in the room, the sensation of weight on the chest. The artist who painted this had somehow understood that experience, had given it form. He'd taken the invisible terror of sleep paralysis and made it visible. He'd shown what it feels like to be conscious but powerless, to know something is wrong but be unable to act, to sense a malevolent presence and be incapable of escape. And he'd done it in a way that was beautiful, terrible, yes, but also formally composed, carefully lit, expertly rendered. This wasn't a crude horror image meant to shock. It was a serious work of art that happened to depict the worst kind of nightmare. That combination, the technical skill applied to disturbing subject matter, was what made it impossible to dismiss. You couldn't look at the nightmare and say it was just sensationalism. It was too well made, too thoughtful, too aware of exactly what it was doing. The woman in the painting remains anonymous. She's not a mythological figure or a character from literature. She's just a woman, any woman, every woman who has ever woken in the night unable to move, feeling something pressing down on her chest. The demon has no name beyond incubus. The horse has no identity beyond mare. They're archetypes, universal symbols of the terror that visits us in our most vulnerable moments. And that universality is part of why the painting endured. Anyone who had ever experienced a nightmare, anyone who had ever felt that paralyzed fear, could recognize themselves in that image. It wasn't depicting something exotic or foreign. It was showing something deeply, fundamentally human. The fear of the dark, the fear of helplessness, the fear of violation, the fear that something inhuman is watching us when we sleep. Between this nightmare and the transformation of Bottom, the artist painted 3 more visions, each one exploring a different terror. The first, guilt. Lady Macbeth with the Daggers, painted in 1812. She stands in complete darkness, her figure emerging from the black void like a ghost materializing from nothing. She's wearing a white nightgown, thin fabric that hangs loose on her frame, and the whiteness of it against the pitch-black background creates a stark, almost painful contrast. She glows, not with warmth or life, but with the cold luminescence of something dead. Her face is what stops you. Her eyes are enormous, swollen wide, the pupils dilated so far that the irises have nearly disappeared into blackness. But they're not looking at anything. They're staring straight ahead with the fixed, glassy intensity of someone who is seeing something that isn't there, or someone who is seeing too much. Her eyebrows are raised, her forehead creased, giving her expression a quality of permanent shock, of horror that has become frozen on her features. Her mouth is slightly open, the lips parted as if she's about to speak or scream, but no sound is coming out. The jaw is slack. There's no tension in her face except around the eyes. Everything else has gone limp, as if her body is operating on some level beyond conscious control. And in her hands, held out before her at chest level, are 2 daggers. The blades are long and dark, catching what little light exists in the painting and reflecting it back as dull gleams. Her fingers are wrapped around the handles, but the grip is wrong. Not the firm grasp of someone about to use a weapon, but the trembling clutch of someone who is carrying something they desperately want to drop but cannot. Her knuckles are white, her hands are shaking, and the daggers are covered in blood. You can see it on the blades, dark streaks that run from tip to hilt. You can see it on her hands, staining her pale fingers, and if you look closely at the white nightgown, you can see small, dark spots where the blood has dripped onto the fabric. She's been holding these weapons for some time, long enough for the blood to dry, long enough for it to cake on her skin. This is not the moment of the murder. This is after. In Shakespeare's Macbeth, Lady Macbeth convinces her husband to kill King Duncan while he sleeps in their castle. She questions his manhood, his courage, his ambition, until he agrees to the act. And when he comes back from the murder, shaking and horrified, carrying the bloody daggers he used to stab the sleeping king, she takes them from him. She mocks his fear. She tells him to wash his hands and forget what he's done. A little water, she says, will clear them of this deed. But it doesn't. Later in the play, Lady Macbeth begins sleepwalking. A doctor and a gentlewoman observe her wandering the castle at night, her eyes open but unseeing, rubbing her hands together over and over as if washing them. Out, damned spot, she says. Out, I say. She's trying to clean blood that is no longer there, blood that only she can see. She's reliving the murder every night, trapped in a loop of guilt that her waking mind tried to suppress, but her sleeping mind cannot escape. And this is that moment. This is Lady Macbeth in her nightgown, sleepwalking through the castle, holding the phantom daggers that she took from her husband's hands that night. The daggers that should be gone, should be hidden, should be forgotten, but have somehow returned to her grasp. Because guilt doesn't vanish just because you've washed your hands. It stays. It festers. It manifests. Look at her posture. She's standing upright, but there's no strength in it. Her spine is straight, but it's the rigid straightness of a corpse, not a living woman. Her arms are extended, holding the daggers out away from her body, as if she's presenting evidence. As if she's showing someone, showing us what she's done. But her face says she doesn't want to. Her face says she wants to look away, to close her eyes, to escape from this moment, but she cannot. This is the nightmare of guilt, not the fear of being caught, not the external punishment, but the internal torment, the knowledge that you have done something irreversible, that you have crossed a line and can never go back, that no matter how much you tell yourself it was necessary, it was justified, it was worth it, there is a part of your mind that knows it was wrong, and that part will not let you rest. The painting captures the fragmentation of her psyche. Her body is here, in the physical world, walking through the castle, but her mind is elsewhere. Her mind is still in Duncan's chamber, still watching the blood pool, still hearing the sounds of the murder. She is trapped between waking and sleeping, between past and present, between the person she thought she was and the person she has become. The technique reinforces this psychological horror. The background is absolute darkness. No walls, no floor, no architectural details that would anchor her in a specific location. She exists in a void, a mental space. The only thing that's real is her, the nightgown, and the daggers. Everything else has dissolved into blackness, and the lighting is impossible. There's no source. She simply glows from within, as if the guilt itself is radiating from her skin, as if she has become a beacon of her own crime, visible to everyone, impossible to hide. Other artists who painted this scene from Macbeth showed Lady Macbeth rubbing her hands, or holding a candle, or surrounded by the castle's setting. They illustrated the play. But this artist didn't illustrate. He extracted the emotional core. He showed what sleepwalking guilt looks like when you strip away everything else, when you remove the context and the narrative and leave only the raw psychological state. And he chose to show her holding the daggers, even though in the play she doesn't actually have them during the sleepwalking scene. She mimes holding them. She hallucinates the blood, but the daggers themselves are gone, disposed of, no longer physically present. By putting them in her hands, the artist is showing that in her mind they never left, that every night she picks them up again, that the murder is never finished. This is what guilt does. It refuses to stay in the past. It insists on being present. It takes moments you've tried to forget and forces you to relive them in endless variation. And the worst part is that you do it to yourself. There's no demon sitting on your chest. There's no external force. It's your own mind turning against you, punishing you for what you've done. Lady Macbeth will not survive this guilt. Later in the play, she dies, and though Shakespeare doesn't explicitly say it was suicide, the implication is clear: the guilt consumed her. The sleepwalking got worse. The hallucinations intensified. And eventually, the only escape was death. The painting shows her at the edge of that abyss, still walking, still holding the daggers, still trapped in the moment of the crime, a ghost haunting herself, from guilt to prophecy, from the nightmare of what you've done to the nightmare of what will happen to you. Macbeth, consulting the vision of the armed head, 1793. Three faces emerge from the darkness, and none of them are human anymore. The first witch sits in the foreground, her body twisted toward us, her head turned to reveal a profile that belongs in a nightmare. Her face is ancient, the skin hanging in loose folds, the nose hooked and sharp, but it's her expression that disturbs. Her mouth is open in a wide, toothless grin, the lips pulled back to show diseased gums. She's laughing, or cackling, or chanting. Her eyes are focused on something beyond the frame, something she's summoning, and there's ecstasy in her face. The ecstasy of someone communing with forces that should not be touched. Behind her, partially obscured in shadow, is the second witch. Only her face is visible, tilted at an angle, her features gaunt and skeletal. Her eyes are sunken deep into her skull, creating hollow pockets of darkness. Her mouth is open, but whether she's speaking or screaming is impossible to tell. She looks like a corpse that has been animated and forced to perform. And the third witch, barely visible in the upper background, is reduced to a suggestion. A face in the darkness, a presence watching. These are not the theatrical witches of stage productions with pointed hats and broomsticks. These are creatures that have been warped by their proximity to the supernatural. They've spent so long trafficking with demons and prophecies that their humanity has been eroded away, leaving only the shell. And before them, rising from the void, is what they've summoned. A head, disembodied, floating in the air with no neck, no body, nothing to support it. It's wearing a helmet, the metal gleaming dully in the unnatural light, but the face beneath is spectral. The features are visible but indistinct, as if the head is not quite solid, not quite present in this realm. The eyes are dark hollows. The mouth is a thin line. It hovers there, brought forth from whatever realm the dead inhabit, forced to speak. And below, to the left, is Macbeth. He's recoiling. His body is pulled back, away from the vision, but his face is turned toward it, unable to look away. One arm is raised, the hand outstretched, fingers splayed as if he's trying to ward off what he's seeing. Or perhaps he's reaching for it, demanding answers even as every instinct tells him to flee. His expression is pure terror. Eyes wide, mouth open. This is a man confronting his fate, and he knows it will destroy him. The story is this. Macbeth has murdered King Duncan and taken the throne, but the crown sits uneasily on his head. He's plagued by paranoia, by guilt, by the knowledge that prophecies set him on this path, and prophecies might yet undo him. So he seeks out the witches again. He demands to know his future. He wants certainty, even if that certainty is doom. And the witches oblige. They summon 3 apparitions, 3 visions that will tell Macbeth what awaits him. This is the second apparition, the armed head, and it speaks a prophecy that seems to promise safety. Be bloody, bold, and resolute, it says. Laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. Macbeth hears this and feels relief. None of woman born can harm him. That means everyone. Every man alive was born of a woman. He's invincible. But prophecies are traps. They tell the truth while concealing the most important parts. Later, Macbeth will face Macduff in battle and taunt him with this prophecy, only to learn that Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped, a caesarean birth, not born in the natural way, and therefore not bound by the prophecy's protection. And Macduff will kill Macbeth, exactly as the armed head foretold, because the armed head is Macduff. The vision is showing Macbeth his own killer, and he's too blind with ambition to see it. The painting captures the moment of revelation and misunderstanding. Macbeth is terrified, yes, but he doesn't yet know what he should be terrified of. He thinks he's seeing confirmation of his safety. He thinks the prophecy is a gift. He doesn't understand that he's looking at his death. And the witches know. You can see it in that first witch's grin. She knows the prophecy is a riddle. She knows Macbeth will misinterpret it. She knows he's doomed, and she's delighted. The composition is claustrophobic. Everything is pressed into the lower half of the canvas. The witches, Macbeth, the apparition, all crammed together in a tight space, while the upper portion of the painting is nothing but darkness. It creates a sense of being underground, in a cavern or a tomb, a place where the dead can be summoned, a place where the natural laws don't apply. The color palette is decay, browns and grays and sickly yellows. The witch's skin has the pallor of corpses. Macbeth's face is grey with fear. The only brightness comes from the armed head's helmet, that metallic gleam that catches the eye and holds it, forcing you to look at the thing Macbeth cannot look away from. And the technique is brutal. The witches are painted with an almost grotesque level of detail. Every wrinkle, every sagging fold of skin, every diseased tooth and hollow eye socket is rendered with precision. They're repulsive, but they're also utterly real. You can imagine the texture of their skin, the smell of their breath. They exist. This is the nightmare of prophecy. Not the comfort of knowing the future, but the curse. Because once you know your fate, you cannot unknow it. Once you've been told what will happen, every action you take is colored by that knowledge. You become a puppet of the prophecy, moving toward your doom even as you try to avoid it. And the worst part is the ambiguity. Prophecies never speak clearly. They give you just enough information to feel safe, just enough hope to keep you moving forward. And then they reveal the truth only when it's too late. Macbeth sought certainty and found only riddles. He demanded to see his future and was shown a lie that was also the truth. And he'll carry that vision with him for the rest of his short, bloody reign, never understanding what it meant until the moment Macduff's blade finds his throat. The witches will vanish back into whatever realm they came from. The apparition will fade, but Macbeth will remain, haunted by what he saw, driven by what he misunderstood, marching toward the fate he thinks he can avoid, from visions of the future to the finality of violence. Romeo at the Bier of Juliet, 1809. A tomb, stone walls, barely visible in the darkness. A bier, A raised platform where the dead are laid out occupies the center of the space, and on that bier, draped in white, is Juliet. She's dead, or she appears to be. Her body lies in perfect stillness, her arms folded across her chest, her face pale and serene. The white of her burial gown glows against the darkness of the tomb, making her look like a marble effigy, beautiful even in death, peaceful. And standing over her, his body twisted in violent motion, is Romeo. He's plunging a sword into another man's chest. The victim is Paris, Count Paris, the man Juliet's father wanted her to marry, the man who came to the tomb to mourn his would-be bride and found Romeo breaking in. And now Romeo is killing him. The sword has already penetrated. You can see it buried in Paris's torso, Romeo's hand still gripping the hilt, driving it deeper. Paris's body is arching backward, his spine bending, his arms thrown wide. His face is turned upward, mouth open in a scream or a gasp. He's dressed in rich clothing, the fabric catching the light, but it's being stained now. Blood is spreading across his chest. Romeo's face is a mask of rage and desperation. His eyes are wild. His jaw is clenched. This is not the romantic hero from the balcony scene. This is a man who has lost everything and has nothing left but violence. He broke into this tomb to die beside Juliet. He brought poison to end his own life. And Paris, trying to stop him, trying to arrest him for desecrating the Capulet tomb, became an obstacle that had to be removed. So Romeo killed him, ran him through with a sword. And now Paris is dying on the floor of Juliet's tomb while her corpse lies 3 feet away, oblivious to the murder happening in her name. This is the moment everyone forgets in Romeo and Juliet. The tragedy is remembered as a love story. 2 young people from feuding families who fall in love and die together. But Romeo doesn't just die. Before he takes the poison, he kills Paris. He murders a man who was also mourning Juliet, who also loved her, who had every right to be at her tomb. And Shakespeare makes it clear that Romeo knows exactly what he's doing. Paris identifies himself. Romeo recognizes him, and Romeo still chooses violence. He's so far gone in grief and desperation that he's willing to kill an innocent man just to get to Juliet's body. The painting shows the brutality of that choice. This is not a clean death. Paris is not falling gracefully. He's being stabbed, his body contorting in pain, his life bleeding out onto the stone floor. And Romeo is the one doing it, his face twisted with an emotion that looks more like hatred than grief. Behind them, slightly elevated on the bier, Juliet's body remains untouched. She's in the background, but also the center. Everything is happening because of her. The violence, the desperation, the death. But she's unaware. She's in the death-like sleep induced by the friar's potion. And when she wakes, Romeo will already be dead from poison, Paris will be dead from the sword, and she'll be left alone in a tomb full of corpses. The tomb setting is oppressive. The stone walls press in from all sides. There's no sky visible, no windows, no escape. This is a sealed space, a place for the dead, and everyone in it is either dead or about to be. The only light source is unnatural, sourceless, making Juliet's body glow but leaving everything else in shadow. And the colors reinforce this progression. White for Juliet's corpse-like innocence, dark reds and browns for Romeo's clothing, and the blood spreading from Paris's wound. Black for the tomb itself. Other artists who painted Romeo and Juliet focused on the romance, the balcony scene, the secret wedding, the final kiss before Romeo drinks the poison. They illustrated the love story. But this artist chose the murder. He chose to show Romeo as a killer, to show that grief and love, when twisted far enough, become indistinguishable from violence, to show that the tomb is not just a resting place, but a battleground. This is the nightmare of violence, not the glory of battle or the righteousness of revenge, but the ugly reality of killing. Paris didn't deserve to die. He was doing nothing wrong, and Romeo gains nothing from killing him. It doesn't save Juliet. It doesn't prevent the tragedy, it just adds another body to the pile. And within minutes of this murder, Romeo will drink poison and die beside the man he just killed. And Juliet will wake to find both of them dead, will take Romeo's dagger and stab herself. 3 deaths in one tomb. 3 deaths that could have been avoided. 3 deaths that happened because love became obsession and obsession became violence. The painting captures the moment when tragedy stops being beautiful and becomes brutal. When the poetry of Shakespeare's language is stripped away and what's left is blood on stone and a corpse on a bier and a man dying for no reason except that he was in the wrong place when someone else's grief turned murderous. 5 nightmares, transformation, sleep paralysis, guilt, prophecy, violence. Each one painted by the same hand, each one exploring a different fear, each one rendered with a technical skill that made the horror impossible to dismiss. But who was the artist behind these visions? And why did an entire generation call them paintings that shouldn't exist? The artist's name was Henry Fuseli, though that wasn't the name he was born with. He was born Johann Heinrich Fuseli in Zurich, Switzerland in 1741. His father was a painter, a respectable artist who made portraits and religious works for churches. Young Johann was expected to follow a different path. His father wanted him to become a priest, and so Johann studied theology, learned Greek and Latin, read the classics, prepared for a life in the church. But at 20, he was expelled. He and a friend had written a pamphlet exposing corruption in the Zurich magistrate. The pamphlet caused a scandal, and Johann was forced to flee Switzerland to avoid arrest. He went to Berlin first, then to London, arriving in 1764 with no money, no prospects, and a head full of classical literature and philosophical ideas. He tried to make a living as a translator, he wrote. He taught himself English, and he met the artist Joshua Reynolds, who saw his sketches and told him he should stop wasting his time with words and become a painter. Fuseli was 27 years old when he decided to become an artist. 27, an age when most painters have already established their careers. But he threw himself into it with the obsession of someone who has found his true calling late and knows he has to make up for lost time. He went to Italy and spent 8 years studying the Renaissance masters. Michelangelo became his obsession. He copied the Sistine Chapel ceiling, he studied the human form, the way Michelangelo had twisted and exaggerated bodies to express psychological states. He learned that anatomy could be distorted in service of emotion, that realism was less important than impact, and he read endlessly. Milton's Paradise Lost, Dante's Inferno, Shakespeare's tragedies, the Gothic novels that were just beginning to be published. He consumed stories of the supernatural, the horrific, the sublime. He believed that art should not comfort. It should disturb, it should reach into the viewer's mind and pull out the fears they tried to hide. When he returned to London in 1779, he was 38 years old and completely unknown. He had changed his name to Henry Fuseli, anglicizing it to fit his adopted country. And he began to paint the images that had been building in his mind during those years of study. The nightmare came first. 1781, the painting that made him famous overnight. And it wasn't just the subject matter that shocked people. It was that Fuseli had taken the technical skill of the Renaissance masters and applied it to a nightmare. He had painted a demon with the same care Raphael gave to angels. He had rendered sleep paralysis with the compositional sophistication of Michelangelo. Critics didn't know what to do with it. Was it serious art or sensationalism? Was it profound or vulgar? But the public knew exactly what it was. It was terrifying, and they couldn't stop looking at it. Fuseli would later explain his philosophy in a lecture delivered at the Royal Academy. Quote, "One of the most unexplored regions of art are dreams, and what may be called the personification of sentiment. No man has yet conceived the true character of the terrible sublime, that region where beauty and horror meet, where the soul is elevated even as it shrinks in fear." The painter who wishes to explore this realm must be willing to descend into the darkest parts of the human mind and bring back what he finds there, regardless of how disturbing it may be." End quote. That's what Fuseli did. He descended, and he brought back nightmares. Over the next 30 years, he painted obsessively. Shakespearean scenes rendered as Gothic horror, Milton's Paradise Lost transformed into studies of demonic beauty, fairy tales stripped of their whimsy and revealed as body horror. He exhibited at the Royal Academy regularly. He became a professor there in 1805. He was respectable, established, and he never stopped painting nightmares. The timing mattered. Fuseli's career coincided exactly with the birth of the Gothic movement in literature. The Castle of Otranto, considered the first Gothic novel, was published in 1764. By the time The Nightmare appeared in 1781, Gothic fiction was exploding in popularity. Readers wanted stories of haunted castles, supernatural terrors, psychological dread, and Fuseli gave them the visual equivalent. Mary Shelley was born in 1797. By the time she wrote Frankenstein in 1816, Fuseli's paintings were already iconic. Engravings of the nightmare hung in homes across Europe. When she described the monster's creation, when she wrote about Victor Frankenstein's feverish nightmares, she was writing in a visual language that Fuseli had helped create. The same with Byron, with Keats, with Coleridge. The Romantic poets were obsessed with the sublime, with the idea that terror and beauty could coexist, and Fuseli had shown them what that looked like. His paintings became reference points. His nightmares seeped into the cultural consciousness. These 5 paintings, created between 1781 and 1812, captured different facets of that nightmare aesthetic. The supernatural violation of the nightmare, the transformation horror of Titania and Bottom, the psychological torment of Lady Macbeth, the prophetic dread of the Macbeth vision, the brutal violence of Romeo's murder. Each one was technically masterful, each one was deeply disturbing, and each one was impossible to forget. Fuseli died in 1825 at the age of 84. He was buried in St. Paul's Cathedral, an honor reserved for the most respected artists. By then, he had created hundreds of paintings and drawings. But it's the nightmares that endured, the nightmares that were reproduced, referenced, imitated for the next 2 centuries. Because Fuseli understood something essential about fear. He understood that nightmares are not random. They're not just chaos. They follow patterns. They explore specific terrors, the fear of helplessness, the fear of transformation, the fear of guilt, the fear of fate, the fear of violence. These are universal human experiences. And by giving them visual form, by painting them with skill and care and unflinching honesty, Fuseli made them real in a way they had never been before. To this day, these paintings remain among the most disturbing visions ever put to canvas. 5 nightmares, each one a masterpiece of technical execution and psychological insight. One artist who spent his life descending into the dark regions of the human mind and bringing back what he found there. And it all started with a demon baby that shouldn't exist.